I am delighted to welcome on this edition of the Nordic Football Podcast Stabaek assistant manager Hugo Vicente, Portuguese assistant manager. I hope you're doing really well today, and thanks very much for coming on the show.
Hi, Steve, and thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure because I'm a follower, I'm a listener, so it's quite cool to be part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant to have you on here, and you must be excited ahead of the start of the new season. It's been a long wait
Oof. Yeah.
for Norwegian football, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's typical pre-seasons are very long. This year was exceptionally long. And yeah, but we already had two competitive games, so it gave already some feeling of what will come, but really anxious to start.
Yeah, of course, you've been involved in the Norwegian Cup, and I must congratulate you for making it as far as the semi-finals. You've got a really big match coming up soon against Brann,
Yeah.
and I watched the highlights of the penalty shootout against Molde because Stabaek sensationally knocked Molde out of the Norwegian Cup, the holders of the competition. I think it went all the way through to penalty number 13 or something
Yeah, I think
ridiculous
it was
like that.
12, 12, yeah, 12.
Both goalkeepers scored in the shootout, and I think Mulder on at least two occasions had a chance to go through, but
Yeah.
missed. So, I mean, do you like? Is it quite good having competitive games before the season? Do you think, and to be involved like that?
For me, this is also like a novelty in a way that the preseason is so long that I'm used to Portugal, where you have a month preseason. There we go. I think it's quite nice to have these games, but at the same time, I think it just feels the waiting after those games to start the league. It feels a bit so. It would be nice to have some games and then start right away. But obviously, it's depending if you get on with it, if you win your league or your game, and so on. But yeah,
Yeah, so let's talk about Stabaek then, because of course they are a newly promoted team for this season in Eliteserien. Certainly a club very familiar with the top level of Norwegian football. Bounced back at the first time of asking. But let's talk about the last season at Stabaek. We don't really have enough discussion about OBOS Ligaen on this show. Now, I do believe, were appointed at the club at the beginning of last season. Am I correct?
yeah. I was in Portugal with João Pedro Sousa as assistant coach to him. He used to be assistant coach to Marco Silva in Everton and all these places that Marco Silva has been. And then he had an offer to go to Saudi Arabia, and I didn't want to go because of I have my family here and I have a daughter in Portugal, my wife in Norway, so it would be a really hassle to just be there. So I didn't want to go, and then yeah, I decided to come back home to Norway, and I was searching for something to take a next step. And suddenly came this opportunity to go to Stabaek, and since I thought this is a club that belongs to the first level, I was in the beginning. I was a bit unsure. Shall I go as an assistant coach to the second league in Norway? But at the same time, I had a talk with the manager back then, and I think we kind of identified and we moved on. So February we started. I started with them, and then it was a nice journey until the end of the season.
Yes, of course. The manager of Stabaek at that point was Eirik Schöne, who we did have on the show in the past. And is it a case of there's a clear objective for the club that you had to go back automatically promoted in that season? Was that the objective?
It's a bit like you know how it is in football. One day it's one thing, the next day is another. The main goal is the club could survive if they didn't get up, but the expectation was definitely that we could go up. But then we had a couple of bad results, and then the club was afraid to lose the train, and then they kicked out Eirik. Even though I think back then it was we were still in a good position to go through, but I think it's also, you know how it is. Eirik was connected to the relegation because he was the coach that assumed the last part of the season when the team got relegated. And it's really hard when you start also bad in our home games to have that confidence. The people on the stadium, your fans, your supporter, there is always this shadow over your head that they got relegated, and is this good enough? Is this not good enough? And then when we had a couple of bad results, then the club decided to change.
Yeah, and incredibly, the whole of last season, no manager in Eliteserien was replaced, either sacked or moved on. And there weren't that many in OBOS League either. I think certainly the Fredrikstad boss, I think, bit the dust. There might have been a few others. At this one, I remember, I think you lost against Sturdals Blink, who at that time looked like they were going to even fold as a club.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You were in a good position. I remember looking at some of the metrics and statistics, and the one area you were a little bit behind, you were not quite achieving your expected goals, which might have explained why you probably might have been 5 or 6 points higher. That's football, though. Like you say, changes are made. Lars Bohinen came in to the club. I mean, often when a manager does get sacked, the whole backroom staff get sacked as well. So, you obviously stayed in the role. What is it like, though, sort of when a brand new manager comes in? Is that difficult for the sort of the coaching staff that remain at the club, or does it depend on the person?
Well, I think it depends on the person, depends on the personality and the openness of both people. At the same time, it's not easy. You have different ideas that could came in. It was not the case that it was Lars came in with the idea to build on what was going well and try to be more cynical in terms of becoming more effective defensively. And then we catch the wave that was starting to happen with Gift, that's starting to be a player that became key, because I think if you see the first part of the season, we were, like you said, statistically, we were not so far away from Brann, even though they dominated totally. But we were not scoring goals, and you know how it's football. You don't score a goal, and then we didn't concede goals. We were very solid defensively. But but at the same time, it's a bit hard. But Lars came in, and we had a talk, and we agreed on which one we'll do, and what is his ideas, and it was easy. Obviously, it's very hard. Sometimes you are, as a coach, you have your own ideas, and because there was this period in between, I could lead the game against Start, but then came Lars. So it's a bit like your ideas, how different would be from Eirik, even though you were his assistant. And I think people sometimes forget that you have your own identity, you have your own ideas, but if you are a good professional, you adapt to what your job is, to help your head coach to achieve what he wants. So that's not so hard. The only thing I demand is to be heard. The rest is the decision is his. That's how it is.
Yeah, and you had a brilliant finish to the season. I think you won something like 8 out of 10 games, unbeaten finish, and in the end, actually achieved the second place fairly comfortably. And you're right, everyone really last season's talking about the record-breaking Brann team. Yeah. You look at the team of the season, and most players in that 11 would be Brann, but you did have an amazing player who, incredibly, was kind of slipped under the radar on this particular podcast. Yeah. Emmanuel Gift Orban, who ended up scoring 16 goals for the club. He's now absolutely nailing goals in the Belgium league. A Nigerian striker, 20 years old. And what's the story behind him? Because it looks like he came to Stabaek initially on loan from a club called Bison FC. Then you sign him permanently. And then within less than 6 months, he sold to Ghent for £3.3 million. So, yeah. I mean, getting him into the club, obviously, that's a brilliant bit of recruitment in the first place. And he didn't take him very long to settle in and score goals.
No, it's a bit, I think you're not so lucky to hit the moosh all the time. So it was really bullseye. The club usually goes to these academies and with people from the club to scout players, and we identified that player, and he came on trial with us, and he did some friendly games in the preseason. He had something, but to be very honest with you, if you tell me, okay, this guy in 6 months is going to play in your team, score every goal, every game, and he will be sold and he will score, I wouldn't believe you. Not that he didn't have that X factor, but when he came, there is a lot of adaptation. So you don't really know who is the player in the beginning, and there is a big barrier. Norwegian culture from the Nigerian culture, it's totally different. And Gift was not a traveled guy. In between, he speak French. The only person that speak French in the team was me. So I was the guy trying to make him adapt, adjust, and following him up in this process. But it's not easy. But after a while, so he came here, and then his visa went out, and then he came back again. And when he came back again, we decided to sign him because he did have one thing, and that's the thing that I can say now. Now it's easy to talk good about him because he's succeeding. But the truth is, he's a guy that doesn't miss chances in the trainings also. And that's not normal. I've been working at top level in Portugal. I work with really good players the last 3-4 years. And I haven't seen a player that is so effective. And then you always wonder, is it the level that it's too low? Or is him that definitely has some X factor here? And I think you can say that Gift will succeed because he can transform any chance into a goal. He's a guy that very seldom misses goals.
Yeah, it sounds like his development was rather rapid or very quick. And I mean, do you think that is almost a natural thing, or do you have to, and give yourself some credit here, down to the good coaching at the club to help him, develop his own self personally, technically? But is there a lot of that? Is it just a natural thing?
I could clap myself in the back if I wanted to use the chance, but no, it's like, I think you definitely create conditions for them to blossom in a way, to flourish. You create the conditions, but in the end of the day, it has to be something they already have. And in case of Gift, obviously he needed some adjustments on timing of pressure. When Peter Belsvik also, which was the other assistant, he did many work with him on the way he moved on the box in terms of video. So these small details gathered with this desire to succeed, because he's really like a real win. He really wants to win. He really wants to succeed in life. And that's other side, which is the social side, that sometimes you in countries that we call third world countries, usually players come, it's their life, it's their only way to succeed. I'm not saying that was the case, and I'm not saying that is always the case, but I think Gift was very dedicated. He was really wanted to succeed, and I think the context helped him a lot, because I think the team also allowed him to adapt fast. So and he learned that he was not the kind of player that you had to explain everything. He understood the game, even though he was very savage in terms of behaviors in relation to others. But at the same time, you don't want to cut that. As a coach, I do believe a lot that I'm here, and I don't want to drop the quality of the player to my level. Because if I do that with Messi would never be a player, and I play really lousy. So I really feel like I don't want to drop the level of the player to my level. I want the player to keep his own identity. So we try to in a way create a context where he could use what he was good at, scoring goals, and and we succeed with that. That's a successful story. We have many that probably were not so successful. So sometimes it's like, what happened here? Yeah. So we don't know. We try to create the same environment. We try to, but it was definitely a quick adaptation and a very quick story of success. Definitely.
It is difficult to predict the future, but in your personal opinion, just how far can he go in the world of football? Could he be the next Victor Osimhen?
I don't have any. Now I'm thinking like, I'm not saying I don't have any doubts, but I think the next step is Premier League for sure. Only if they are sleeping, which they aren't. The clubs aren't. I think it's Premier League for sure, and from there, that's a bit which context he will go, which club, but it's a bit like there is always this. I also worked when I was in Copenhagen. I was also coaching Rasmus Højlund, which now is a big guy also. And Rasmus was a bit the same scenario. It was a player that scored chances, but he had to develop other parts of the game, but he was good at scoring goals. And that's what you want from a striker. So I prefer to have a guy that can score goals and don't do nothing else, but he scores goals, and then you can build on it. So there is this natural talent and this cold blood in the finishing situations that these players have. And if you ask me why, is it training? Is it? It's a bit of everything. And in the end
it's
of the
rare,
day,
isn't it? It's the hardest thing in football to score goals regularly. It's probably the hardest thing in football.
Indeed, I remember having this discussion some years ago in a different club where we had a player that just scored goals, and he was awful at the rest. He was bad at meeting. He was bad at doing his first touch. He was bad at everything, but he scored goals. How bad can that be? So
exactly, it's started about, and he got plenty of goals for you last season. And obviously then you sell him to Ghent for 3.3 million, which is great money. But there's always that question: how do you replace someone with that many goals? And what you've done, you've signed two interesting strikers this season. Mushaga Bakenga, who you just got to look at his previous scoring record in Eliteserien. He's proven at this level. I don't think things worked out too well at his last club, but I think he was halfway around the world. And then an interesting player who I think could be a dark horse this season, Kasper Wartz-Ho, I think is the pronunciation. Yeah. Two interesting signings there for you up front. So, I mean, it's kind of like Gift is someone like, he's probably irreplaceable on his own as an individual player at this stage. But you have brought two interesting players up, and it looks like you're going to be playing in a 3-5-2 system. Are you excited about this partnership?
Yeah, I think also we just signed Kevin Cabran. I don't know if you are updated on that. He came from Viking, which is a new add-on for us. And that's also to compensate the lack of a striker, because in the end of the day, last season we lost all the strikers. We sold Oliver Edvardsson till Holland. Then in the middle, we lost Cornelius Hansen, Fiti Masemi, and Gift. So we were with no striker. So basically, we definitely needed players, and we tried to get a mix of players with experience and players that can give us something. And I think Kasper is definitely interesting because he's like he likes to describe himself, he's a power player. He celebrates every goal he scores in the training session, so that shows either how crazy he is or how desire he has to succeed also. So we create a good mix of players that can do a good partnership on the top, indeed. Mush with his experience, Kasper, and now Kevin, that can also give us something. He used to be a winger, but I think he can give us a lot in half spaces, coming back. And so it's exciting. It's exciting. I think we have players that can fight for every position. And that's a situation where we were not last year. So last year our team was much more limited. So right now we feel like definitely there is a huge competition, and that is lifting also the quality of the other players that were here from last season that probably you expected less, but they are overperforming right now, or performing very well. Let's say it this way.
As we go into the season, you are one of the favourites to be relegated with the bookmakers. Is it a simple case of that your actual aims and objectives for the season will be simply to, first and foremost, survive? Or do you have to look a bit beyond that? Otherwise, you can get almost like too negative with the mindset.
I think if you internally, as a club, we haven't set up where do we feel internally as the team, not the club, but the group. What do we feel? Where would we feel we can reach? But as a club, when we started, it was a clear definition. Is like, we cannot be relegated. We don't want to be relegated. That's our goal. But obviously, as the preseason goes on, and you realize we signed a lot of good players. I think we hit the signings quite well. The needs we had to the midfield, the competition we have on the midfield, in the defense, in the top, and that has given us some games where we played against top clubs already, where we performed quite well. I know this is still preseason, but that makes people maybe thinking maybe this is not going to be so bad. And then we beat Molde. It was on the penalties, yes, but we did a very balanced game. It was not Molde was not so superior as they could or should be. So it makes you look at it like, are we underdogs? I don't know, because in the end of the day, you need to start you need to start playing and see where you are. Maybe in the middle of the season you'll have a different perspective. But I really feel our goal is to not get relegated, but at the same time we have good expectations that we can do a little bit better than that.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning to the listeners that this is a very, very different Stabaek squad to the one that got relegated. I mean, I've looked at the player turnaround since then. There still are a few players around, but there's a lot of changes. I agree with you. I think you've done well with the signings. I mean, even in the goalkeeper position, Sandberg, I think, was goalkeeper of the year in OBOS.
Yeah.
But you brought in Isak Pettersson, who I think it's a ridiculously good signing, actually, because he was Allsvenskan goalkeeper of the season not too many years ago. I don't really know what Toulouse were doing, not playing him much. They did have a goalkeeper who was in great form. I think that's why he couldn't really get into the team there. But I think Pettersson as a starter for Stabaek is kind of ridiculous. I think you've added good depth in all areas of the field.
Yeah.
What sort of football are we going to expect from you though this season? Do you think, Hugo, for the neutral out there? Are we going to see an exciting Stabaek, or is it? I mean, I've noticed, since Lars took over, you haven't conceded many goals. It looks like you're going to be often in this 3-5-2 system, 3-4-3 system. Is it going to be defense first or a bit of a balancing act?
Yeah, it's a bit. I think it's a bit hard for me to say what do we want because I'm not Lars in terms of his head, but obviously I'm aware of what we want. I think it starts on the first change that Isak gives us another dimension of the game. So maybe even in the first build-up phase, you can risk much more because you have a player that is very, very comfortable with the ball as a keeper. And also you have midfielders that are much more confident. And at the same time, I think if we compare last season to this season, when Lars came in, the goal was, like I said, to not change so much, to build on what was done, but to be more cynical, defend better, defend well, defend low, and then try to create with the ball. So, and being effective and so on. I think this season, I think we can expect a bit more something in between. But at the same time, if we look at the perspective, we are still a team that our goal is to not get relegated. So we are not going to go into the naivety that we go playing at the Molde Stadium and Bodo Glimt and just let's go full pressure and also there is a trend in Norwegian football which kind of benefits the big teams, I think, in a way. Or let me say it differently, not the big teams, but the teams that are good with the ball, and that's where we want to be. Which is there is a tendency in Norway that there is no middle block pressure. You either press high or you press low. There is nothing in between. And this is a tendency, this is a trend, and this is I'm not saying it's good or wrong, but this is what's happening. And this allows when the opponent, if you win the ball, if the opponent drops back, if you have quality with the ball, you can dominate the game much more. It's harder to create chances because the defense has a very low block. But at the same time, you can control the game much more. And I think we have players that allow us to dominate the game in a better way than we had last season. So I think we can be more ambitious on the way we want to play. That's the way to answer, I think.
Let's just talk a little bit about coaching then, and the role of the assistant manager and the tactical side. Yeah, I'm sure you've coached many different systems in your coaching career. At the minute, you are coaching. It looks like this 3 at the back system, whichever way you want to go about it. And how easy is it to coach, say, a 3-5-2 compared to a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3?
I think to be honest, this is the old discussion. Systems mean nothing, but they mean a lot. They are the starting point of the dynamic you want to introduce in the team. I think the thing that it's that it's different with a back line of 5 is that the behaviors of the defenders is different from a back line of 4. With 4 players, you don't want them jumping all the time to go in pressure, but the back line of 5 allows you to do that. So I think the problem is not coaching with 4 or 5. I think the problem is jumping in between these two scenarios. because offensively, I think every team is doing that or was doing that dynamically, building up with 3, side back go up, winger comes in. It was already a trend that you build up with 3, but now it's a clear trend. But that's a counter response to the Guardiola legacy, having 5 guys in the half spaces in the middle room. And when you have 5 guys, you need to have a line of 5 so that you're not so vulnerable. And that makes you be more aggressive. So I think the only issues is, what do you want from the system, and do you have players that fit in there? I think, for example, and this is not a critic to us or to any club, but we are seeing so much times that we need to question ourselves as coaches. Is the system enhancing the quality of my players, or I just want the players to fit on my system, period? And I think that's an answer for each coach, or a question that each coach should put in himself. Because if you say, I want the player to fit in my system and I don't care, great, you're judged by your results. That's it. But I think if you think the opposite, you not only focus on results, because if you do it like that, it's because you believe in it, but also you value players. You probably play better football because players are able to do what you want from them or expect. Because it's a bit like with this trend of playing with 5, now you have side backs that are totally high and wide. I'm Portuguese. I love wingers. I cannot see side backs up in the line that are unable to do 1v1. I do that. We do that. That's how we play. But if you ask me, I love wingers. I love 1v1. But at the same time, would I play 3-5-2? Yeah, I did it before. I love the 5-3-2 system. I like the 3-4-3 also. So I think in the end of the day, in my opinion, it's based on how can you better enhance your players, even though obviously you as a coach, you have a preferred system. If you ask me, why do I like 4-3-3? Because I've been using it so often that in my head, automatically, if the opponent does this, I know how to counter, I know how to explore it, because I've been through it so often. But I've been it on 5-3-2, and there is pluses and minuses. I think if you want to press very high with a back line of 5, you have some restrictions there, or you have real big animals and the wing backs that can do up and down and also very technically developed. And if you're not playing at the top level of the game, it's not easy to find those players. So that balance, you as a coach, you need to find it. But I think in the end of the day, if you coach based on principles, it doesn't matter what system you use. It's. I think that's what I believe.
Very interesting stuff indeed, Hugo. And I just want to talk. You mentioned that obviously you're Portuguese. I've been looking at your history. You know, you've certainly been been around many different clubs. Started off several in Portugal, and then you managed to make a move up to Scandinavia, a team called Bergsoy.
Right, yeah.
I think is how you pronounce it, and then Follow, and then Viking. You were at Viking for a couple of years, FC Copenhagen as well. Back to Portugal and back in Scandinavia. I mean, what's your sort of journey, and how did you get the connection to Scandinavia?
Yeah, it's a bit, those teenage passions of you like a country and you like it. And that's it. I had that with Sweden. And then I like Swedish music. I like Swedish cars. And suddenly I got attracted with I was still a teenager. And then the more you dig in, the more you like things, the social balance, the political system. So I was kind of drawn to it when I was a teenager, and that kind of stick here. So when I was in Braga, as academy manager, we had a very successful period there, where players like Francisco Trincão and Pedro Gonçalves that scored the goal against Arsenal were part of our academy, and they got out from there. We had really good success, and back then I was thinking, I need an adventure. I want to challenge myself. And I saw advertising. I just searched on Google Translate, old days, old internet, very slow. I searched football job in Swedish, and I landed in the Norwegian Football Coaches Association. I saw a job offer and I sent the CV, to be honest. No idea if I want to take that or whatever. I just sent it as curiosity. And suddenly we started talking, and I got invited to visit the club. It was a lower level. All my friends called me crazy. All my family called me crazy. But I thought it was like, you know what? what I've done in Braga is done. Now I need to have a new chapter. Definitely you learn the lesson because it's a totally different context, especially if you go to what we call here a Breda club, which is clubs where their main goal is not to be in Portugal. Every club, even if you're a social club, your goal is to be better than Benfica or Sporting. So you always, it's to win, it's this and that. And suddenly you come to a context where they want to be good, but they want to be good socially. And suddenly you're totally like, where am I? And then I was there for 3 years. It was a really good entrance door to Scandinavia. And then I just felt, okay, I need more. So I need to go back to my professional level. So, yeah, and then things happened. There was just work and work and work. And then when I was in Copenhagen, came the opportunity to go to Portuguese League in Famalicão, where we had this amazing first season, and then Boa Vista. And then when my boss moved to Saudi, I was thinking, okay, I'll learn. I know how to speak Norwegian. I like to be here. My wife is here. Why not? So I came back. So that was basically that.
You're a multilingual person. I mean, is at least 3 languages, maybe more.
I speak Spanish, but that every Portuguese can speak at least Portuñol. So yeah, I speak French, English, Norwegian, Danish, but Danish is very similar. So I'm okay with languages. So
that's very good. That's very good indeed.
That's a really great tool that sometimes you're not aware how important that can be as a coach. And that happened to us in Famalicão. We had players from all over that you really need to use. And it's so much easier when the communication exists. It's so much easier to share your ideas. So it's key.
What is your own personal, the Hugo Vicente sort of idea of football and methodology of football? What's your sort of philosophy of football personally, would you say?
Yeah, in terms, I'm very obsessed by the training process. I do believe I'm not saying like Klopp, but almost. I do believe the best transfer window is your training sessions, almost. Because I really believe in development. I really believe what you do every day will make a difference. Obviously, if you have more quality players, better. If you have the chance to buy a player, you buy the best one you can have. But I really believe in training. I'm very influenced by the tactical periodization of the Portuguese way of thinking, in a way. I really believe in contextual training. I really believe that isolated trainings are a no-off. It's almost like, are they bad? No, but there are things that you can do much better. So I'm quite extreme in that. In that, and then I'm talking about shadow plays, passing exercises, and things like that, where you remove contextuality, which for me doesn't make sense. There is time and space for them, but let's not make this our priority. And then football-wise, I like possession. I like possession, but I like also quick transition. So I would be a mix of Klopp, Guardiola, and the Brighton manager, De Zerbi, which is right now maybe the most exciting one in terms of football-wise. That's how I like to play.
Do you have any big influences as managers that you look up to, really respect, and that you maybe sort of would like to model yourself on at all? Or is it loads of different sort of people?
No, I think I had, it's unquestionably the effect or the influence that Mourinho had to all the Portuguese coaches, not because that he won. I don't have nothing to do with personality or whatever. It's not that, but in the way when I was started to coach, we were moving on from a totally isolated where you make drills, you make this and that. And Mourinho was the first coach that succeeded winning with the different coaching methods, where your game is the key, where everything goes around your model of play, which is the key ideas of tactical periodization. So when that happened, it was like a wow factor. And then methodology, you know what I want to say?
Yeah, I know what you want to say, yeah.
I think Mourinho was a big influence, but the rest, I don't have. I think it's almost like in your career as a coach. If you ask me where you want to go, I want to go as high as I can. But do you have any dream? I never really thought of I would be in Norway coaching, and things started and it just went. I'm not a guy that, I have this ambition, I have this goal. Obviously, I want to achieve more things, But I'm not a guy like saying, oh, I want to go to the Champions League. I want to coach this club and that club. I have a weak spot for IFK Göteborg because when I was younger, like I said, I used to love Sweden. So, and Gothenburg in that time.
I also have a soft spot for that club, I must say.
So, but at the same time, it's like I don't really have. I have coaches that I look for to influence on the way, for example, Maurizio Sarri work with his defensive line, getting ideas there. The way Guardiola. So you grab a bit of everyone, but I don't have like this role model that I think I want to be like this guy. So,
what do you think the future then for Hugo Vicente? Because I know some people are very happy in assistant roles throughout their whole career, but others sometimes think, maybe one day take the step and be a full head coach on a permanent basis. Do you see yourself maybe doing that in the future potentially?
Yeah, for sure. When I came to Norway, that was my first plan, was to come back because you come from the Portuguese league, top 6 in the world. So you're thinking, okay, I'm arriving here, see if there is any opportunity to be a head coach. And that was my plan. But at the same time, it's key to reinforce this because I think I love to work on football. If you ask me, do you want to coach kids or youth in the system in the future or senior? I love to coach youth, but right now I've done it for so many years that now I want to continue on the senior level. I want to be a head coach, but at the same time, if I'm not a head coach, I want to be the best assistant I can be. And for me, it's more like if it comes the right project, I want to take it, but I don't have any issues on being an assistant coach as long as I'm a part from the coaching staff. You're a key part, a key contributor, a guy that can have his opinions, that can be part of all the discussions, because there is different ways of working. And if you're just an assistant coach to put cones on the floor, then don't count with me. That's basically that. So I think I love to teach, I love to coach, and it's like if I see myself in some years as a sports director, but not now. I see myself as a head coach. But that could be now, but because I'm ready for it. But if I can still be assistant coach in a good level, I don't mind doing it and continue that path. So that's the future idea. That's the plan.
Yeah, and just before we finish, going back to this season, obviously, you are the assistant manager under Lars Bohinen. What's it been like working with him overall? Obviously, you must have a decent relationship there. He's retained you and everything, and I mean, he's still unbeaten in a competitive match for Stabaek, remarkably. So, it must be. And what's the sort of the overall coaching team setup at Stabaek these days? I mean, are they...
things change, obviously. So when Lars came, he brought his assistant in the new season. So the start of this season, he brought his assistant coach, which is Andrea Loberto, that has worked with him before. And Lars told me that, Hugo, I'm happy with your work. You have contract to the club. I want to keep you. You can help us. So, but obviously I'm bringing someone that has been used to work with me. So probably some roles will be more, but the key thing is that we kind of define our roles and move on. If you're okay with that, and I'm okay with that. So I wanted to continue. We succeeded. So, and now we want to see how it's going. But right now we have a coaching. We have the normal setup. We have a fitness coach. We have the goalkeeper coach. We have 2 assistant coaches. We also have a top speed utvikler, which is the role of assistant coach that follows up the youth that are taking that step to the first team. And Andrea also does the analysis, so it does a little bit of both roles here. But it's been interesting, when Lars came. It's a big name in Norwegian football. So I was a kid. I remember him playing as a guy that likes Sweden. I also like Scandinavia. So I remember all the Norwegians and Sweden players in my time. And that's the time I used to be a crazy fan for football. Now I'm a crazy on the coaching job, not as a fan. Let's call it this way. And it was exciting to be able to work with such a big name and the guy that already had experience. And and in the end of the day, I really like the fact that it didn't came in thinking like everything is wrong. It came in and, okay, this is what we've been doing. This is good. I want to improve this, and I want a little bit different here. Let's go. and that was easy to start working with. So that was quite easy.
Yeah, and I think you're the third guest we've had on who has been an assistant to Lars Bohinen, and everyone has always had great praise for him. I really was surprised that Sarpsborg didn't keep him in the job the last time he was managing Eliteserien football. But give me 3 Stabaek players to watch out for this season for the listeners. I'm sure there'll be some interested people, maybe even fantasy related here, or someone that might surprise going under the radar.
I think it's as a coach, it's quite bad if I talk good about the player and they will think that no. But I think it's interesting to see what Kasper Høeg is going to perform.
Yeah.
I think it is, and then I think we are having, especially if we talk about youth players, we started having Alexander Andreasen starting playing. Last year he did a couple of games with us, but he was not there yet. He still has 17 years old, and he's been playing as a wingback for us. And it's been an interesting development. And that's something that it's quite interesting in this club, is that you have a lot of youngsters that they practice with us, and that you can really see that they will probably pop up. We have Kai also, Kostadinov, which is a guy that last year got injured when he was supposed to start coming on again. So a bit curious on what can he do. But I think it's, once again, we had I like the quality, the technical quality of Fredrik Haugen. I think it's a player that is quite exciting in terms of him and the ball. We also signed Luca, which is 2 players that can play in the same position. A guy that I remember playing against him in the Portuguese league, that can give us solidity with the ball. So yeah, I think it's more of the youth to see, are they going to make a breakthrough? Like, for example, we had Filip Risa, a game against Molde, that he had to came in, and he was the guy taking the last penalty.
This is a 15-year-old lad who came on in the 110th minute, saw out the draw, and then scored the penalty.
Yeah, and we have other options, so it's not like we have to put him because we don't have no one else. The only thing we kind of thought twice, because Lars said, I'm going to put him as a number 7 taking the penalties, but suddenly we started talking like, but what if he fails? It can. So we tried to delay it, but then he had to take it, and he was cold-blooded as we expected. So yeah. It's quite interesting because it's a kid that is performing well. That's why he came in, and could be a guy that can break through this year. I don't know.
I sense there's a pretty good feeling just in general around the club, as you would expect from most teams that have just been promoted. It's not always the case, but it feels like there's excitement with the new signings you brought in, the youngsters. And I mean, I just got a good feeling that you certainly will surprise, certainly in the first half of the season, if you can use that momentum. Would you agree with that? Well, you are going to agree with that, aren't you? Because
I feel it's a bit like, at the same time, it's obviously Stabaek is a club that it's not unknown to be on the top level. So it's not, you kind of feel like you arrive where you're supposed to be.
Belong, yeah.
So it's not like, we are here now we are excited, but we need to. So I think that also gives us some, and the people that work around the club, they are used to this also. So there is no craziness around it, and there was some reflection of who to get, how do we reinforce our squad, and I think that's why we are with a positive feeling. It's because we've been good, we've been playing good, we signed players that we need, they are performing as expected. We have a couple of them that came in, but they are still injured, so we haven't seen them yet. So we hope they also are signings that are what we expected, and and I think if we do that, I think we might do a better season than expected from everyone else, so that we are not the relegation team expected to be relegated. But I do feel it's a consequence of the work that it's been done by the club in terms of signings, and we haven't lost since last year. Some, like you said, official games. So, and even training games, we lost one, and it was a training match where you change players because you want to change. So, and then we lost 1-0 against Hammarby, and it's like, I think we are performing quite well, so it gives us quite confidence. So the confidence is not based on crazy feelings. It's based on facts of what we are doing until now. At the same time, just to sorry to interrupt, but at the same time, it is the calendar. It's quite hard. We have a lot of away games. The first 3-4 games, our away games are quite hard. So it's a bit like if you kind of get a boost there, then probably the season will be amazing. If you start bad, will that affect our confidence? At the same time, that's the good part of people don't expect so much from us, because if we don't start so well, we continue in our path. But it's a challenging couple of away games that we have in the beginning. So.
Yeah, I've said on the podcast many times, I think it might be the toughest, best standard of Eliteserien for a long time, because, no disrespect to some teams that have been in the league in recent years, like Jerv, maybe Mjøndalen, 2 or 3 others spring to mind, Ranheim. The makeup of the 16 teams this year does look really strong. Stabaek have had 5 medals since the turn of the century. Won the league in 2008, and you're just 2 wins away from lifting silverware. Hugo, if you in the Norwegian Cup semi-final at home to Brann, everyone's expecting Brann to win the game. They're already priced up actually as odds-on favourites. But you're just 2 wins away from a trophy, 2 wins from a European adventure. I would say, make sure your passport's renewed, but I don't think there's any danger of that. You're a well-travelled man. I mean, that's got to be exciting to be involved at this later stage of the competition.
Yeah, it is, and it's against Brann, which is a team that we know quite well. They haven't changed much, so that's a plus for them. And they are a team that they do play a football that I like a lot. They have really good players, so it won't be easy. But at the same time, I think we are much more leveled this year than we were last season. And still last season, we were able to be competitive against them, even though they were clearly
You did
better.
Take a point off them, one of the few teams to actually manage it.
Yeah. So I think there is a good possibility that we can go through, and in the end of the day, even if Brann is expected to be the best team in the league, which some people say it is, even if that was the case, I don't think we are so far. But at the same time, it's one game, and in one game anything can happen. And if we win this one, then we are in the final. It will be the 3rd final of Stabaek in their history. The club has won one time, has been runner-up another time. So the 3rd would be nice to be part of it. And if we are able to achieve an Europa place by winning the cup with 2 games in the season, it's amazing. It's almost amazing.
It would be incredible. I wish you the very best of luck in those potential cup matches. The best of luck for the season, and also your own self personally. You go in your footballing adventure. And is there anywhere the listeners can find you on the socials at all?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, but I'm not a big tweet, and I'm not a big guy sharing social media. I'm a very low profile.
You're not an Instagrammer then?
I have Instagram is more personal, so usually I have Twitter, but I'm not sharing as much as I should. I think LinkedIn is probably the place I take it more serious, but I'm not a guy that is so active on social media, to be honest.
Well, sometimes might be the best thing these days. So, but once again, we thank you very much for your time here on the Nordic Football Podcast. Have a great season, and we'll be following your adventures in great detail. But thanks again.
Thank you.